Hello and welcome to Lesson 4 in C# Programming Fundamentals, in which we're going to be looking at functions and parameters. So we've already covered a lot of these basic things: selection, iteration, and now it's time to move on to the functions itself. So again, quick recap: sequence is the order of which instructions are executed. Very, very important. Iteration is our way to repeat instructions over and over again, and branching is the way we can choose to go in a certain direction or which part of the code to actually run. So look at this. These are some of the keywords that I'll go over in this sort of next 10 so minutes. Declaration and scope. So when we create something locally, it means it's only accessible within that section where we have declared it, and it'll make sense as I demonstrate in a moment. Global means we should be able to access it from anywhere within the program, or sometimes within that actual script, that file, that bit of C# code, or whichever language you're using. And then a function is just a block of organized code that we can reuse. We can usually call it from anywhere else within that program. It helps us sort of divide our solutions into different modules. This can make it easy to manage, easy to balance. It can sometimes make it even easier to read because you see what it's actually doing by its name rather than just a bunch of instructions next to each other. When also we are using functions, we can pass data between them, and that comes down to we can pass the value, which is basically we pass a copy over, or we can pass a reference to it. For this session I'm just going to stick to the value, but I will be demonstrating how that works. So I have gone into Visual Studio. I've created a new project, a console app.NET framework. I've just made sure I've given it a sensible name, or that isn't it, and I've made sure it's going to a sensible folder. But I've already got one made, so here we go. So here I've got the main program. There's my C# thing. It started with this static void main. For those who are new to this sort of thing, main is the entry point for this program. Most C#, C++, Java programs have a main function. So I'm inside main, and I've created two variables. Int A is 5, int B, actually I'm going to change that to 7. So I've got these two variables, and I'm going to call this function swap it. Now I need to send this data over to swap it, so I'm going to say A, B. So it's going to send those values. It's going to whinge at me because there's no overload method for two arguments. So these are parameters, but when it receives them, they're arguments. So I'm just going to say, okay, we're going to receive integer A, we're going to receive, integer B. So now it's happy because it knows that when I send these two parameters over, it's going to receive these. Now I could rename these anything I want. I could call it C and D. It really wouldn't care because we're passing a copy of it over. Okay, so now I'm inside swap it. I'm just going to say integer temp equals A. Then I'm going to say A equals B, and then I'm going to say, there we go. And fortunately Visual Studio's got quite clever now, so it's offered it to me automatically. Just press space in there for the sake of white space. So what this is going to do is means A becomes B and B becomes A. It swaps them over. We'll use this function a lot when we're doing sorting algorithms. So now if I was to output this, so if I was to say console.writeLine, I don't want to do A plus B, I just want to do just A, so that it wasn't particularly clever. I'm going to copy that because I'm lazy. I'm going to put that to B, so it's going to output A and B so I can see on screen what is happening. I'm just going to copy these again. I'm going to, oops, that's messing up a little bit. There we go. So this is looking not as particularly as pretty as I would like, so I'm just going to tidy that up at just a fraction. So I'm outputting A and B, I'm swapping them, and I'm outputting them again. I'm also going to output them from the swap it function as well, so I can see what is happening. Oops, there we go. There's a lot of these indentation lines now that I don't think I'm very happy with. But if I now press play and run this, we should now be able to see, oh, went too far too fast. So the program did run, but it executed, it went through all the sequence of instructions and then finished. So what I'm going to do is just put, okay, I'm just going to create a delay by just creating a string buffer. I always call my temporary strings buffers, equals console.readLine. There we go. So it's just going to wait for me to enter something before it exits. So I'll try again. There we go. So we can see it's got 5 and 7. It's gone to the swap it function where it's now 7 and 5, and then it's gone back and it's still 5 and 7. It hasn't changed the originals. So what's happened is these were our local variables. So they are local to this function. When it comes down here, these are local to this function. So it copies, it basically sends a copy across, it swaps the copies, and when it comes back up here to output these, it's just outputting these versions. What I'm going to want to do for this is I can create some global variables. It's not ideal. What I'm going to do is just delete that for the moment. I'm going to come back up here, I'm going to copy these out, I'm going to move these just outside the void main. So now these are global variables, which means any of these functions can see them. Still not happy? Why is that not happy? I know why, because it wants these to be static, because this is a static function, which just means it will remain in memory while the program's alive. It stops the computer from deleting them from memory when it thinks you might not want them anymore. Oops. If you use Unity a lot, you see static quite a lot. Now it doesn't like doing swap it because that doesn't exist. So there we go. I've now got some global variables, which is how we normally start. We'd normally do that first. So it's going to, they're global, it reads these, does swap them. So if I now output this, there we go, 5 and 7, 7 and 5, and they've remained swapped in the 7 and 5. Okay. But global variables aren't great. We really shouldn't kind of use them, so I'm going to get rid. So undo that, bring them back. There we go. I'm going to pass them over. That's come back to these. I should have done a little bit more, shouldn't I? If I say int A, int B, just type that back in again. I'm going to pass a copy instead. So what I'm going to do is, I still want to be local variables. That's a good programming technique. But as we saw, it didn't update and change anything. So what I'm now going to do is pass them by reference. So if I come down to this function, ref, oops, spelled ref wrong way around, ref. And what ref does is it means it's passing the memory address. So rather than passing a copy of it, it just says which memory location it's currently saved in. That's what it wants you to work with. This is really good if you're passing something huge, by the way, because you're only passing the memory address, which is much smaller than passing a massive object. Say, for example, you want to pass a map to a function so you can return a list of directions. You just pass, look, it's stored over there, you go and look. It's just a whole lot quicker. So we'll just run this again. There we go, we've got the 5, 7 originally. We're inside swap it, we've swapped them over, we've returned, they're still 7 by 5. Just so we can see it a little bit easier, I'll just make a couple of changes. So I've just made a quick change where I'm just saying in main, back in main, in swap it, just so you can see that that's exactly what it is in fact doing. There we go, we're in main 5, 7, in swap it 7, 5, back in main 7, 5. I should have done that from the beginning, but that's a basic use of functions. Yep, so go ahead, have a play about with these, try it yourself, and I shall see you in the next one.